So hey everybody, welcome to this webinar about how to automate your ServiceNow billing. We are here from GoodSign. Janne, our presenter master today. Janne is our Chief Product Officer.
Hi.
And then myself, I'm here as a host for Janne. So I'm Taija, one of the founders of GoodSign. And yes, so how about, I was thinking kind of getting everybody warmed up. Maybe we could do a little poll in the beginning. Would that be something? Let's see. Launch. You should see a question in your screen. So if you can choose an alternative there. There we go. So does it actually show it on the screen, or should I close it? There we go. Share results. So pretty even. We've got people whose organizations have been using ServiceNow over 5 years, under 5 years, and now planning to use. Just very even. So pretty good. Okay, good. That's a start for Janne then to think what to talk. So there we go. Then back to our screens. So yes, we were thinking that we'd just give one slide quick overview of GoodSign and then really dig into the ServiceNow billing in special. So let's go. All right, so GoodSign, we're a SaaS software company. Our aim is removing pain points in pricing, billing, and monetization of subscriptions, pay-per-use, and contracts that might cover a lot of different revenue streams as well, subscriptions and pay-per-use and so forth. And really empowering different types of anything as a service business models. For today's topic specifically, we're certified in ServiceNow, and you can find us in ServiceNow Store, the integration there. And yes, we're headquartered in Finland and we're used by customers across 14 countries in Europe and North America so far. And we are handling over 4 billion data transactions for our customers and managing 900 million worth of billing for our customers. And yes, we've got a targeted offering for MSP customers. So probably a lot of this service now, some of the examples that Janne has, they go around this managed service provider examples, but of course there are other industries as well. And anyone using ServiceNow, this might be something to look into. And I've got here like 3 reference customer examples, like Fujitsu is probably best known out of these logos around the world. Then Valter is a government ICT center, so lots of like high security requirements as an example, and Enfo is a Nordic operator, so or like MSP. So these examples, and then I'll just hand over to Janne and let's dig into the subject.
Yeah, and I'll start with saying that actually now in the webinar too, you have the possibility to type your questions. I'm sure you'll find the possibility. So please put your questions in writing if you have something, and then we'll try to answer in between or in the end.
Yeah, especially in the end, at least something if it might really come at the topic, I might pick it up and say thanks, Janne.
Yes. So thank you, Taija, for the introduction. So what I will be talking today is mainly 3 sections. So first of all, I'm going to talking about the challenge that we see with service business and managed service providers, business, what kind of challenges there are. I'm going to address several pain points of services billing from an IT service provider perspective mainly, and I'm addressing those issues that how can we help, or how can you help yourselves, combining ServiceNow and GoodSign. And so hopefully you get some food for thought, good ideas, and so forth. So the challenge in brief, as you can see, so you guys who are using ServiceNow, it really truly streamlines your service management. That's kind of the core of your operational system for a service company, making sure that the everyday works, things are captured and so forth. But there's so much more to it being a service provider. You need to be able to respond to end customer specific requirements in invoicing, in billing, pricing, making sure that you can serve them, fulfilling their needs. They may have bargaining power, pricing negotiations. So you truly need to make sure that your end-to-end process is working fine. There's several things that really require flexibility in systems. These days, more and more businesses, more and more services are using pay-per-use models, varying prices, you get volume benefits, so forth. So you need to consider all of those. And that really means that there's a lot of complexity. You need to be customer focused, flexible to your customer requirements, and yet you need to keep your service production productized. That needs to be running on its own. So complexity can lead into situation for a service provider that there's, in the end of the day, there's a lot of manual work. Service managers doing day in, day out, especially in the turn of the month, collecting data, making sure pricing is correct. Manual work, a lot of pressure, time pressure, books are closing. Manual work is costly, but it also is quite error prone. And in the worst case, it means that you leave something uninvoiced that you really did. And that's kind of that's a bad thing for a service provider, not to invoice what you are entitled to.
And that's something that the analysts say, like Forrester, for example, that typically 3 to 5% revenue leakage is in these types of services where you have like continuous but variable services, not something really, really simple and fixed.
Yes. Then looking at it from a slightly other angle, most of you are running businesses that are kind of contract driven. You make a service contract to provide certain services, and kind of traditionally service contracts are really kind of it's a pile of paper, very heavy on legal conditions and really made for people to read and interpret, a lot of annexes and all kinds of jargon in there about the legal conditions. And typically, few weeks after the contract is signed, it's already out of date. So things have changed, customer uses different services, and having those contracts, for the lawyers and for the others, just means that people need to kind of interpret these contracts, and check that what did it mean in terms of pricing and so forth. Then again, when you are able to digitalize your service contract, it provides totally different type of transparency. You have to kind of structure the service provisioning, service entitlements, and doing so you can connect the kind of the everyday data from the operations. You connect it to the terms and conditions, and that enables you to automate the things. And also, like we are talking a lot about pricing and billing here, so you can automate to the full, keeping focus on the daily operations separate from that, and so you can enable automation. So kind of a slogan here that you can start to observe and act instead of running reports and react. And I think that's quite vital from many perspectives. I'm sure people can kind of relate to this. I've done my share of reading contracts, and trying to see how to deal with it. So really going into the kind of the heart of today's topics, what we really want to help people in this trade, do is that you have done investments into your ServiceNow. So it's a great solution to run your service, to run your operations, deliver, keep track of what exists, what are the configuration items and so forth. It's great tool to that. But what we really recommend is to truly utilize that investment and maximize the ROI by utilizing that data in other processes and other tools as well. So it's the IT world is talking a lot about revenue operations. So it's truly from service providing to the finance. So leverage your investment by truly utilizing the data in pricing and billing, also in finance, in pricing, costing. But also kind of making sure that other interest parties are aware of what's happening in sales, in account management, everywhere. So that's kind of a core part of today's message. here. Then I'm going to jump into these pain points that we mentioned in the beginning. So regardless of the, I would say, industry, but modern service businesses, when business models have transitioned from this, shipping boxes, so just doing doing one-off services and so forth. So recurring services suffers quite often from multiple pain points. So one of the first things is the revenue leakage. So you don't invoice everything you are entitled to, and you already provided the services you didn't invoice. So that's in the bottom line.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, and I will actually come to the examples of each of these later. So, so that's kind of number one. And then to fight that problem, quite a lot of time is spent in service organizations to secure that nothing is forgotten. Manual work, service managers, people are running reports, checking things out, and then you spend a lot of resource on it, but also manual work is prone to errors, and it also affects your cash flow, because if your invoicing is late 1 or 2 days, it slows down your cash flow. Third thing in there is that, as we know, we are always reinventing ourselves in this trade. You find new ways to monetize your services. You want to make new offerings, new pricing models, how to be more kind of lucrative to your customers, or upsell. So too often we see that systems are actually prohibiting you to invent a new business model, and that shouldn't be the case. You need to be able to try out also new things without major investments to ERP or so forth. Errors, billing errors. It's kind of goes hand in hand with manual work quite often, to be honest. But I think in today's world, there's of course a lot of competition, and even as individuals, if we receive an invoice from an electrician or whoever, and that invoice is wrong, totally wrong, you get invoiced too much, you don't go back to that vendor easily. So we need to make sure that things are right. Both ways, you don't invoice too much and you don't invoice too little. So credit invoices are always bad for your reputation. And lastly, of these common pain points is that since there's a lot of happening in the background, things get installed, capacities are raised up and down and so forth. And then in the end of the day, end of month, whatever your cycle, you do the invoicing and it goes to the finance books. You need to know you need to have the transparency for the revenue recognition. You need to have the transparency for the auditors. Did you truly invoice and book at the right time of the services? So you need to have this full data change. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go through kind of from practical examples, how are we kind of addressing each of these, kind of leveraging that ServiceNow and utilizing good sign. But before we go to that,
we have a poll.
We have a poll. So
yes, let's see here. There we go. And now it should come to your screen. So the question around these pain points that Janne just went through, if you can select one or more, is it one? One of the following says, out of these, like if you recognize one of these in your organization, what is kind of evident? So let's see. So we've got a third of the votes come in. It's a little bit of reading. We'll leave a little time. Still waiting for a little bit. Let's see. And there, I'll be closing the poll there and sharing the results. And
wow.
Too much manual work and slow cash flow and billing problems are the top choices today.
Yeah. I would say it's quite typical. Nobody admits that they are leaking revenue, but but I think it's the reality in many industries.
Yeah, and it happens with those. If those are the kind of the pain points, then that's also something that comes as an after kind of results from it. So yeah.
Yeah. Good. So I'm gonna go on. So first I'm gonna be tackling this revenue leakage. So you can see the bag of money on the top left of the screen there. So what are then kind of the practical means and things that how can you utilize that ServiceNow data and ServiceNow investment? How do you kind of best utilize that to eliminate revenue leakage that you might experience? So I'm going to say that one of the first things is that this example is really from a service where you are actually base your kind of pricing and billing, for instance, on active configuration items like amount of servers, workstations, whatever network equipment. So one example that I'm putting in here is that truly when the service now reflects the active situation of how many are up and how many are in service and what was kind of installed last month and so forth. So you need to integrate that information, the data feed to your pricing and billing solution. And the really practical example in here is that it's quite typical that we see that when people are doing this manual work is that they might, take a snapshot, of the last of the month, for instance, or so forth. And then they interpret that thing. But having a live feed, you can make sure that things like middle of month additions or even like a last of month addition of some capacity is added. And if your contract says that, hey, it's the status of how many were active in the last of month, that's the part of your monthly billing. So right from the day they are added, you can start invoicing. So that's one example in here. Of course, to do that, it's so important that the data is correct. So of course, to connect those configuration items and services in ServiceNow, you need to make sure that there is a data kind of a connection, common value that knows that this actually belongs to Taija and this belongs to Janne and so forth. So that's of course important. But really live feed enables you to kind of automatically make sure that, hey, this was added, now it's go also financially. Opening up this a little bit further, I said that how do we know, how can we help, with the combination of GoodSign and ServiceNow. So really all of us know that data is the king. Well-maintained data is the king. So what we truly recommend is to make sure that data is correct. And we in GoodSign actually kind of help to visualize also and highlight certain discrepancies. So when we are getting the data feeds in, we are making sure that we show the things that are unmatched. And I have actually just a little screen capture here and I'll explain this a bit. So just a screenshot of when we are getting the data feed from ServiceNow, we typically use this kind of a inbound data staging area, excuse me, object input in here. And what it actually shows, I actually don't have a pointer on, it seems, but I'm gonna take a pointer. Just bear with me 1 second. So we are kind of showing in here, for instance, that there's 78 workstations now that are actually unidentified. So somebody is using them, but who? And then we receive it in the system. It gets really exposed to the user, and then you can go deep. You can check each of those things, and then there are certain elements of the data. Those of you who are familiar with ServiceNow, you can see that these are kind of actual metadata from a CMDB. So, and in this case, we are using the company name as the common nominator. And then we could check that, okay, is it that the customer is missing or is it misspelled in ServiceNow? You fix it, and then it gets, on the next run, it gets corrected. So visualize exceptions. That's one of the things. And only having the connection between those systems responsible really helps you do that. Otherwise, you do some manual matching. The other example I'm going to use about the eliminating revenue leakage is that following up the situation and status, and I'm still using the configuration item example. So when when in GoodSign we are defining these billing logics or pricing logics, it's quite typical these days that you are pricing, for instance, server capacities by the number of CPUs. You might have a business logic that says that all active servers that have more than 4 CPUs, there's $100 extra fee per month, just because they use so much power or whatever your reasoning is in there. And I'm using this example that there might be a clever customer who knows that actually they are checking the data in the end of the month. So in the middle of the month, they raise up the CPUs to 8, and a couple of days before the end of the month, they put it back down to avoid paying more. Having the data feed connected, you can automate and react into the max of the month because that was truly used. Okay, maybe it was a little bit bad example. I believe people are quite honest, but still, you know, when things capacities are elevated, raised higher, you know, it gives you the ability to react into those.
Yeah, and with all the cloud capacity services, that just fluctuates over the month. So it's not, you know, you don't have to do it intentionally, like just having a clear, crisp example of yours. But,
and both ways also. I mean, if customer is entitled to some savings by using less, you know, that's also part of the customer satisfaction.
Yep.
Then I'm actually moving forward to the manual work. So why do we claim then that you can reduce the manual work? And it truly comes from a simple fact that those people on the, if I use a term, shop floor, people who are really doing the services, the engineers, you know, technicians, whoever are doing that work, you know, they do their job, make sure that everything is up to date. I did this, I did that.
Activated.
I activated, I answered to this ticket, you know, whatever is there. So since that information is gathered in ServiceNow in a structured manner, so make sure that you use it. We've seen too much, you know, that then that data is separately reported, gathered, you know, Excel'd, you know, you take it into Excel and you start calculating. And if you digest that data automatically to your billing solution, you pretty much can eliminate all of that work doing it. It's more robust, works also if employees are having a flu and so forth. So there's a lot you can do by utilizing that data.
I think there's a question that might actually relate a little bit to this. We've got a question that, hi, we are just implementing ServiceNow, and it's far from being completed, both data and processes. So what is the optimal time to start thinking billing topics? And now you talked a lot about the data when you have it in place, but what about if you're still implementing? What would you say?
That's a tough one, but I would say that you of course need to think about your pricing and billing right from the get-go, right from the start. First of all, when you are planning your implementation, make sure that you kind of use the systems where they are at best, you know, first of all. But then there may be situations that you are a little bit unsure. You know, do I put these business services here or there, or do I put these contracts? So I think you should start from the get-go. If it might sometimes be slow to configure everything like in your service now, so then you can start with billing system to also kind of close some of the gaps, and then little by little understand, you know, what's the kind of best way of doing it.
And I think most of our customers are actually so that even if they've got ServiceNow implemented quite far, there might be some data streams that are coming from systems that are not described in ServiceNow. So you just combine them both.
Yeah. And then also gradually you can also start making shifts, you know, that you can start putting more and more weight on the ServiceNow side.
From our system too, you can kind of switch over.
Definitely, wherever it kind of supports your kind of service production. But I would say that don't wait, because it's kind of, then the manual work just keeps gathering more and more. So you should start before it's a problem. Maybe that's the best guidance I can kind of give.
Yeah. And anyone else, if you do have a question, I might find a spot to put it or just leave it at the end. So just go ahead and ask.
Yeah. So in kind of a little bit more graphical format in here. So in essence, you know, that how are we saying that we can help in eliminating the manual work? It's really kind of combining kind of two different streams. So you have data sources, one of them being ServiceNow, CMDB, business services, whatever there is. It's very typical for the managed service providers that there might be also additional ticketing systems or front-end portals, you know, a lot of hybrid offering, also offering like cloud services. There might be some other VMware, some kind of that. So you kind of take it in, mediate it in, and then of course you also need to have your product catalog, service catalogs, a way to manage the services. That's a good example actually what Taija was saying on that question, that to some extent you could model service contracts as types of business services in ServiceNow, but you could also model it elsewhere and learn. So you connect, you know, the contracts, the price lists, the product catalogs, customer specific prices. You get the data feed, and then a system like ours can then do the rating and charging, billing, revenue recognition, and so forth. It's really based on having the data feeds and then a flexible rule engine that connects these things. What was agreed with the customer? What's really the service that is the commercial service against that service that was done, matching to its customers and making sure it's automated end to end.
One of the things I could maybe add to this picture is that we sometimes get asked, like, is it so that you're kind of doing the actual invoice sending somewhere, and what about finance? So, you know, what happens at the end of the picture?
Yeah, I would say that most important thing is that getting the numbers right, and then we either kind of send the invoices directly via our banking network or sending it to your financial backbone. In there. So the most important thing is having the right numbers.
Yeah, so we pass data to SAP, Microsoft, other ERPs, e-invoicing operators, so forth.
Yeah. Yep. Then further examples about the manual work elimination. It's really, and I think it's a very practical example, you know, that I'm going to just start with the example, you know, that your business might really be the contracts are such and the terms that for every single instance of something, like in this case, I'm using server as an example. So whenever you have a server in production, virtual server, whatever, there's a monthly monitoring fee of that when it's in production. But also there might be a separate management fee on you know, Linux servers, but not on Windows servers. There might be additionally a varying fee based on the CPU count or backups volumes. Some of the data might come from outside of ServiceNow, like a backup volume, data volumes. You know, they might come from the backup solutions. So my main point here is that, you know, you don't have to calculate this separately. When you have the data, it all happens once when it's configured into the rule engine. That kind of illustrates your commercial model in there. And the way we kind of do it, I actually have a little screen capture here of the rule engine, just to keep it a little bit more kind of practical. Might be a little bit smallish in here, but I'm gonna explain through the thing. So basically, when we configure the rule engine, we say that which kind of organizations we check. We make the rule engine to check all the servers. There's certain details in there. You can go in and check all the metadata. So it knows, for instance, all the metadata in the configuration item, and then you can just start putting logical steps. If the install status is equal to installed, just in a text format in here, you define the rule. And if this is true, then on all those servers that are in installed status, you are actually starting to charge full server management product. That again then has a price in the price list and so forth. And what we just did is we created a business rule that starts to run from now on, from the next run and so forth. When the status of those servers that were now active, installed, if it gets decommissioned, then of course it's no longer matches and you don't inappropriately invoice the customer. So it's just a practical example of the rule engine, how it works.
And you could even add that this is something that we've agreed this year, but next year,
Yeah.
already you can put in dates as well.
Yeah. So just that was a quick demo. Another example, it's quite typical these days, especially with end customers having a lot of like bargaining power. So you might have a situation with the customer that they want to make sure that actually that if our consumption of service volume grows in total, like the number of servers is above something, then we get some volume benefits. And sometimes this kind of commercial terms are not easily definable in like ServiceNow. So then you can use kind of service contracts, now in this case in GoodSign, where you can actually then define the contracts. And I actually have a little screen capture on this here as well. So what we have is a pre-configured contract module where you actually do things that there's a contract, it's kind of validity dates and so forth. Different entitlements are defined in there, and then you start tying there that check in this contract all the servers that are active, and that's the data feed from the ServiceNow. You kind of connect it to a product that is invoiced, and here you can see that actually these are the servers that they have. It's 43 different servers, and those have been, they're calculated, and then it's connected to product and pricing. So there is a tier pricing scheme there that if you have more than 51 servers, those in excess of 51 get €5 per month, and the lower amounts a little bit more. So it's very easy to kind of set up even quite complex commercial terms by this. And this is typically something that is not maybe natural in the CMDB to do. So you kind of connect the commercial terms to the actual living data feed. And now when the guys in the shop floor are adding servers or putting them down, it just works. Then it just happens with the right calculations.
And you might even have customers that are, they've got a large group concern.
Yeah.
So you need to do that volume calculation all over the different customer contracts in the same concern too.
Yeah. I have a lot of examples of this manual work elimination.
Good thing that was one of the top ones today.
So one of the things that is causing quite a lot of headaches, for the people in the billing team, finance team, or in the service management team is that exceptions. So, with this customer we have agreed this, and with this customer we agreed that the first 6 months of the beginning of the contract they get something cheaper or pay something kind of more, and you need to have the kind of pricing and billing solution where you can flexibly utilize like general list prices, customer specific prices, and even configuration item level prices. There might be something that there is actually this server that we are using, but its use is not so important, and we just simply don't want to pay that much on it. And maybe you are friendly and okay, you can get that particular server is a bit cheaper. And you also agree actually that you are not monitoring it so closely. So you can even go to very kind of deep, detailed kind of pricing. Doing that, managing those prices, on this kind of level, it again eliminates the need to do this interpretation every single month. You can put the prices in there beforehand. You've agreed price increases for next year, you put them in. You don't need to remember during your holidays, between Christmas and New Year to make those changes.
Yellow sticky notes.
Yeah. So kind of in combination, these kind of things truly help you to decrease the manual work. New business models. That was the next kind of pain point. So what to do, it's kind of, we have a good imagination in business, these days, and And the main thing, of course, is that everything needs to be based on some kind of real data, but since you know what's happening, you know what capacities exist and so forth, what are their kind of properties, there's actually then no limit, how to utilize that information. So, and I'm using here a couple of examples, is that maybe again, customer says that since we are a big customer, there needs to be some volume benefit for both of us. So as an example, you might have a monthly help desk fee for end user support, and you've agreed with the customer that actually the monthly help desk fee per workstation needs to be lower when the active workstation count exceeds certain agreed limit. That after we have 1,000 workstations or 2,000 workstations, then the service fee needs to go down. And this kind of things you can model and do when you have the data. Another example, maybe you want to drive customer to certain direction, you can do elevated monitoring fee when an age of survey exceeds 3 years. And then again, automatically, who's gonna check those dates? But if you have that on the data, okay, this service is to be older, higher fee. You can also drive them to renew the infrastructure, and sell, in other words. So having this sort of purpose-built solution on side of the ServiceNow helps you really cater for even the most complex logics. And we see these kind of things every day, that, and people are, oh, how am I gonna then do that, and you can. Billing errors. I'm going to billing errors here. So again, it goes to the same thing. I seem to be repeating myself, reflecting the true data from the service production side, service operation in near real time. It both makes sure that you do invoice what you are entitled to invoice, so billing error in terms of losing money, but also vice versa. When something is decommissioned, some capacity or so forth, when it's decommissioned, it also stops the pricing and billing of that. And again, nobody loves that. Hey, actually, why are you still charging for the monitoring for the server that you guys decommissioned last month? Whoops, I forgot to change it in my Excel report. And that's a major part of the customer satisfaction. So it's really helps you to manage both the commercial ramp up and the technical ramp up of certain capacities and so forth. And it cannot be, I think, exaggerated that any elimination of manual work steps typically has direct impact to reducing errors, because computers don't make similar mistakes than people. I'm actually going to the final of the five pain points. So again, being able to utilize the detailed data from the kind of service operating systems like ServiceNow, it really helps you to kind of track kind of backward and forward, that, hey, this was invoiced and it was really based on truly provided services. And now the accounting standards, IFRS, and good accounting practice, they are truly actually demanding quite a lot. Auditors are checking this, that did you truly invoice what you were entitled to, and did you book it into the right time frame in there? And having that connection is really, really vital. And we've had some pretty good results with our customers, with the auditors, that they've been able to prove that everything was right. Another element of transparency, if customers don't like wrong invoices, but they also like to have a lot of details in it. This is now the invoice, what am I actually paying for? When you can use the detailed data on the background, it gives you the ability to produce quite rich detailed invoice specifications with the invoice. And maybe even so that the accounts payable just gets the invoice, but your kind of counterparty service manager might separately get the detailed specification, this is what it was based on, so that they can check it. So that's part of transparency, not from the auditing and finance process, but also being transparent with your customers. And again, you avoid additional reporting processes by email or so forth. So really, as a kind of practical, just a screen in here about the tracking the charts. I recognize it's a bit smallish in here, but basically it's showing that from the same from same one server, you know, then we have kind of got Linux management and CPU capacity and server monitoring and backup. So we know when each kind of separate kind of priced charge is made, we know that it was against this server. And even if they are then collected to the invoice, we still have the details in the background. So you can go down, go back, which is typically not possible if there is some Excel somewhere and somebody makes manually the final invoice. It's hard to kind of see that.
And that works for your own organization, people working in it and customers both as well.
Yes. Also, really part of the thing is that, like I said, that computers don't make mistakes, or they don't make similar mistakes than people. So part of the thing is also that when you are doing your invoicing and charging process, you know, month by month, every day there's something happening. So what we've introduced actually in our tool is sort of monitoring tools that are actually highlighting everything is green here, but having then the capability when services are kind of rated, priced, you can start seeing that is there some major kind of discrepancies. So in here we can just see that actually the invoicing is 0.69%, you know, above the last month. And why I'm using this example is that sometimes computers make weird things, and there might be a system error that some data is duplicated or so forth, and you would immediately see before you send the invoices that we are 100% above last month. And we didn't really do that good. So then you can start reacting and seeing where the discrepancies are. So monitoring the thing beforehand to react to exceptions before they go to the customer or your finance. So how to get going? You know, I've addressed quite a few things in here. So everybody who wants to kind of improve and leverage the service now, improve your kind of billing process. So first of all, of course, we need to understand where our pain points are. So what are our pain points? Are we spending too much time on the manual work? Are we lacking some data? Are we just, you know, are our contracts, you know, totally ununderstandable and we know nobody knows what to do with them? So understand where your pain points are. Then start thinking that what is the first thing we need to fix? Is it on the pricing side? Is it on the data quality? Where do I start? And then if your problems are related to such where we can help you with some capabilities, then we can help you and give you some guidance on it, and we can also provide the solutions. Like Taija said in the beginning, so one of the key things in here why we are kind of why we are here talking today with the ServiceNow agenda as well is that we have a certified ServiceNow integration, which is basically totally on screen, UI driven. You can connect and start collecting the data from your ServiceNow, whatever data you want, you know, servers, printers, networks, business services. It's actually a user-friendly screen-based thing where you put the connection up and running and define the interval, you know, how often you get the data, and you start kind of digesting it. So the technical part is easy. We are certified in the latest, into the Utah and so forth. So, and really by doing that, it's what the integration does. It starts to gather the data feeds on an interval. And one of the flexibilities that we have in our solution is that I here just have a screenshot, you know, from ServiceNow and the same data mirrored to GoodSign, you know, so we can see the same thing. And the nice thing is that whatever customizations you might do in ServiceNow, like on a configuration item, you add some new fields where you need to track something. Those are automatically reflected in the data model of good sign. So you invent a new business model, you realize that I need to track some additional data. There are no kind of database admin type of work to start adding that. It's automatically reflected, and you can use those new fields into those rules that are used in Belly. So that's actually pretty much it. You know, I'm not going in deep into the integration. So like I said, it's very straightforward. You put the URL, uses ServiceNow standard API with our integration, and you can really get the. Sometimes people feel the technical part is the hard thing. That is not. That's easy. It's making sure your business runs okay. So my summary before we answer any of the questions that we might have is truly that you have invested in a great tool. ServiceNow is great. Focus in utilizing it to the max and running the processes that it is really, really good at. Manage your data in there, use good tools to ensure the data quality, but don't try to bend ServiceNow to something it's not intended to. It's not really intended to doing the invoicing. But you have the data, use it, and have the additional capabilities that are working in parallel or on top or on side, however you want to say it, with the billing solutions, such like ours. We have a good integration, it's robust, simple to set up, and then you can start kind of enjoying the benefits of automation to fight your pain points in there.
There we go. Okay, let's see. Do I have something new on the questions? There is, let me see. Yeah, we've got a question. What is the onboarding or kind of like implementation process like when integrating advanced billing with ServiceNow? So integrating Good Sign now as our example. What is the implementation like?
It's easy.
Short answer.
Yeah, I think it, of course, it kind of first starts from, you know, that we are always, because we are a software company, but we are also service billing experts. So we always, I would say, we start from understanding your business model. How are you truly pricing? Who are you serving? What kind of structures do you have? And we are a bit curious, you know, about that, so that we can then start choosing the right way to utilize Good Sign. So that's kind of how it starts from, and we typically do that in a relatively fast kind of workshop that we understand. We understand then also we want to understand your architecture, because there's other systems also involved than ServiceNow and Good Sign, your financial backbone, maybe your CRM, stuff like that. We want to understand the architecture, what data needs to flow and where, and make sure that it's as effective as possible, kind of best of breed approach. So the architecture, what is your business? And then we start kind of choosing from our kind of box of tricks, so to put it, that, hey, this is something that, hey, it seems that it's very clear. We also want to understand the maturity of your ServiceNow. If you have, for instance, truly put there like business services connected to customers, how they relate to, then it's relatively straightforward to start digesting the different data and configuring those rules and making sure that your kind of service catalog, and what I mean with that is line items, you know, with pricing, and then we can start pretty fast. We also identify if there's some kind of like missing data bits, because that's one of the typical things that those guys, service managers and billing people, they quite often kind of fill the gaps with their Excels and post-it notes. Never forget the post-it notes. So then we kind of together kind of agree that, hey, maybe you should add this to your service now, or maybe we fill the gap in Good Sign, like with our contract module. So we kind of figure out the most economical way to kind of put it up and working in there. Okay, short answer or a long answer.
Short
I don't
and
know.
long. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think maybe one of the characteristics could be like we typically recommend to take like some, I don't know, some amount of contracts and or like your service areas, and then kind of scope projects so that you do 2 to 3 months, maybe, and get going, and then you expand. So you learn, we know your offering and also.
And thank you, Taya, actually for kind of bringing that up, because one thing I need to mention is that typically when companies are doing something on invoicing, it's traditionally been on the invoicing and financial side. It's these big bangs, we're going to renew our ERP. And it's your whole business might be kind of at stake. If you fail it, you might run into cash trouble, seriously. With Good Sign, like Taya said, we can start small, take 1 or 2 customers and start doing the invoicing with that. Run them for a couple months, you realize that, hey, it's working quite fine. Let's expand the usage. So it's very kind of low risk way of starting it. There.
And I think one of the practical things that we usually do in onboarding as well is like kind of mirroring, like looking at what would it look like your invoice now with the prior way of doing it, and this is here a Good Sign, what's different, and there we actually see even the revenue leakage captured.
Yeah, because typically the shadow run doesn't match exactly, but it might be because the other system didn't do it properly.
I don't think we now have more questions, but I recall one of the good questions last time we did this similar webinar in June was that how about if we have like multiple ServiceNows after like kind of like mergers and acquisitions, and maybe even some other ITSM tools. How does this work?
Yeah, that's kind of, that works. So it's quite typical with our customers that there might be kind of even hundreds of different data sources digested. So if you have several ServiceNow instances, you just configure enough interfaces in there to read it, and we are not kind of, it's, if there's some other CMDB or you have some VMware, whatever, you might be also doing cloud, AWS cloud or Google cloud or Azure cloud, we just digest them all in, and of course it might increase the complexity a little bit if like those, if there's, in your example, there's like 3 different ServiceNow like instances, there might be some differences, so you need to adapt. Then again, we can put the different rules to work differently, to configure differently to take the same results, and you still run the same service catalog. So we are very kind of flexible in that. It's not a problem.
Yeah. Good. Let's see. Is there's one question more. We've got actually 2. Hey, let me read these. So hey there, Rosangela Jelly talking from Brazil. Good to be here. My question is about, in average, how long is the researching period for a new implementation project for a Good Sign tool? So I guess, that was a little bit, maybe that this was even, I didn't see the question before I was starting to talk about the
resourcing period, the research period, did you say?
Researching period for a new implementation project.
Yeah, it's kind of, there's, let me answer it this way, that we've done certain things in a kind of in just a matter of like even few days, if the problem is well understood, and so forth, it can be very quick. But I would say that the length is quite heavily determined about our customers' ability to also allocate the resources who truly know what they need. But if we have the right people from finance, service management, maybe kind of technical people, if we get them into the same room in a couple of days, I would say that we get 80% of, of the kind of the scope, determined.
Yeah.
And then the technical implementation, if scope right, can kind of begin immediately, and first results can actually be achieved in days. In days. Then of course we are touching financial processes. There's always certain elements that we need to make sure that everything flows to your books and so forth. And they do create, of course, some natural calendar time needed, to make sure everybody is right. So kind of from the idea, from the research to production, in practice, I would say it's, from starting from say 1 month calendar time to longer, then depending on the final total complexity.
And we don't typically do kind of like a long project before go live. There might be like adding, extending, but we really recommend the kind of the pilot approach in that. So rather go live earlier than really late. Then also a question more. When I'm customer of a good sign, how much your people are available to help us? Your expertise is pretty rare, and I see your help to be a huge benefit for our customers to avoid the same mistakes done several times in different organizations. So so how do we help, and what about the rare expertise?
I think it's kind of, I would say that first of all, we are pretty easy to approach. We are experts in our field. And like I said, we are pretty curious in understanding your business issues. So we are kind of your partners in there. But of course, we also want to make sure that when we kind of do the thing, we enable this automation. Of course, we want to make sure that it's then something that runs and you are as self-sufficient as possible. So we are there when you need us. And in the beginning, we are really kind of partnering. And yes, we are giving our guidance on how to do things. Of course, we cannot tell the secrets of our other customers. So, but certain best practices, we can share based on our experience.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things there is that our approach to the onboarding project is something that we kind of do it together, pass on the information, the learning, you learn yourselves. So that's one of the things. Another thing is that we do have partners who are doing implementations or support with us. So we're not all around the world, but at least there's a few others as well. And
our staff has actually quite wide experience from various fields of business. So that's one of the benefits working with us.
Yeah, that's it. I read all the questions, and we are, approaching 3 minutes early to ending the webinar. So we're pretty well in time. So hey, I'd say thanks all. Thanks for joining. Hope you got some good insights, and then we're here. Just anything that you want to ask more, and just shoot us an email or.
Okay.
Cheers.
Until next time.
Yes. Bye-bye.